Last week I had the opportunity to I gave a speech on setting healthy boundaries for a nonprofit. And a little bit about this nonprofit. This nonprofit is a organization that helps teenagers transition into adulthood. They help them apply for colleges, they help them apply for jobs, they go over finances, just that whole thing that we all went through. I guess the background for some of these kids, they're all under 25, right? These individuals come from all different challenges of life. They come from all different areas. Um, and it was a good opportunity for me because it helped me get out of my comfort zone. Public speaking is something that I still struggle with. I'm definitely a lot better at it now through this, right? This camera stuff and all that, but it still is something that I struggle with. And so for me, it was a good opportunity to get out of my comfort zone, see how I would perform, and see if like the material and everything that I had was going to be something that was, I don't know, like beneficial. And I went through like a 55-minute conversation with these individuals and pretty much just talked to them a little bit about like how I go about setting boundaries. And so I got great feedback. I got super, super great feedback. It was really cool. And they want to start like a men's program because there is two women that are running it right now. And so there's a need for almost like in a sense like a male figure, right? And so they've tried some challenges. They've tried some individuals coming in there, and anyways, I mean, they say like, hey, dude, you might be a good fit for it, and so I'm gonna entertain the idea of doing this. And so what I failed at was I recorded this video, and I didn't get the consent of the individuals in the video to allow me to share it, and so I have this like really cool 55-minute speech that I gave on setting healthy boundaries, and I can't share it. And so I'm going to be respectful of their privacy. I'm going to be respectful of the things because I don't want to tarnish any other relationship that I build with these individuals. I'm trying to see if it's focusing on that. Anyways, but whatever. And so here's kind of how I went about this. And so I think for me, at least for me, especially like in business and in relationships with people, it's this constant thing of learning like the value of myself, learning the value of my time, learning the value of like my energy, my resources, and just being a little bit more kind of just setting healthy boundaries with these things, right? Where to draw the line with certain situations, certain people, certain environments, and things like that, right? And so I wanted to jump right into this and say, hey, these are the boundaries that have worked for me. Watch out for this. Watch out for that. These are the things that I did, and boom, do this. But quite honestly, the problem with that is that everybody comes from a different background. I mean, you have individuals that were from different races. You had individuals that were from ethnicities, whatever you want to call it. Different situations, different hardships. Just different challenges. They're walking different walks of life. They all have different careers. They explain some of the different stresses that they had with said careers, and then challenges with like car trouble, dealing with parents, finances. So there's a lot of things that it's hard to just have like a generalization of boundaries and say, hey, stick to these and then you'll be good. It doesn't work like that, right? And so I completely didn't give the speech on healthy boundaries, and I went ahead and gave a speech on emotional like awareness, in a sense, emotional maturity. And the reason I did this is because I feel like this is a very, very key part of learning how to set healthy boundaries. How do you know which boundaries to set and which ones are healthy if you are not aware of your emotions, if you don't log your emotions? And so, a little short story. For me, I have had a dependency or an avoidance type of issue where I constantly went with alcohol since I can remember, since I was probably 18, 19. I'm 34 now, so that's probably some 16 years or so. So for the last 16 years, anytime I had an issue, I would pick up, I'd go drink, like screw it, feeling a little bummed, whatever. I'm gonna go have me a beer and relax. Cool. Then excited, right? Oh, I'm gonna go, I had a great day, I had a good business deal. I'm gonna go grab a drink. Let's celebrate. Boom, boom, boom. Man, relationship trouble. Screw it, let's go have a drink. Hey, we're getting together here. Hey, let's have a drink, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that. I just looked at the problems that I was having and how much of a dependency on alcohol. And then also, I've had a DWI. Not proud of it, but I made a mistake. I didn't have healthy boundaries when it came to that, and I was just too loose with it. And then the legal system was like, "Come here, buddy. You've been playing long enough. We are going to we're gonna tighten these little boundaries for you because you obviously don't know how to control this stuff, right?" And so, now in this season of life, for me, I realize that emotional maturity and emotional incarceration, that's a word that I stole from, I forget the gentleman, he's got a podcast. He's really good at this stuff. This is kind of where I get some of this stuff from, just the consumption of information. And so there's emotional incarceration, emotional maturity, and emotional intelligence, whatever you want to call it, right? I started to kind of just look back and quite honestly journal. I started to journal a lot. And I'm like, okay, I went through the breakup. That was the biggest, like, I keep leaning back on that. But quite honestly, that is really like the pivotal thing in my life where the switch flipped. And the reason for that is because of a couple things. I went through this breakup out of fear. I found the one thing that didn't work in this relationship, and I honed in on that particular problem, and I made that the total highlight of this relationship. And this is why I'm out, because of this little thing. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but ultimately what it was a cover-up. It was a cover-up for the fact that I was scared to be vulnerable. And so because I was scared to be vulnerable, it was easier for me to find something to blame than it was for me to open up and say, hey, these are the things that I'm scared about. This is, quote unquote, in a sense, like what the version of myself that I've been hiding from you. And I don't want to continue to do this anymore. And so that fear and vulnerability was the reason why I jumped ship. And I've always done that. I've done that I've dated some awesome women. Hold on. I've dated some pretty awesome women. I've had just awesome, funny, hot, just well-rounded, just beautiful people. And so when I ended up going through that breakup, I decided to pull the trigger on it. I was like, I'm out. Like, this just is not going to work, and I'm just going to run, right? And so then what ended up happening for me was I went through, like, this depression phase where I'm like, damn, I messed up. That was, like, something that I shouldn't have done. Definitely could have handled that better. I did try to reach out and try to rekindle it. It didn't work, right? And so then in the midst of all this depression and everything like that, I just leaned heavily to everything that I've known. For the last 16 years, I've dealt with I've leveraged alcohol in just about every aspect of my life. And so then I ultimately just got tired of feeling like shit. And then my performance at work was bad. Even my manager would notice and be like, "Hey man, I don't know what's going on with you, but you might want to take some time off. You got some vacation you might want to use." I was bringing such a negative environment to that facility. I just had a shitty attitude. My work performance wasn't what it used to be. And man, like, then I wasn't happy at home. And then me and my ex, we painted the living room black all through my kitchen. It's like this flat black. It looks really dope. It's super, super cool. But man, I'm in a dark time. And I'm sad, and I'm depressed, and I'm lonely, and I'm dealing with the fact that, like, this person is no longer part of my life. And then I'm sitting in this room, and it's all black. Well, then I spend a lot of time avoiding the house because of the core memories that were here, because of the emotions that were associated with this property, because of the fact that it was black. You know, it was a lot. So what I would do is I would just go to the bar, because that was just the easiest thing for me to escape and deal with the things that I was dealing with. And I was just drinking. And so then it got to a point to where I got behind on some stuff, like financially, my goals, physically, mentally, spiritually, everything. I was just behind on everything. Avoidance, right? And so ended up working through that, right? Ended up going to my brother and my sister-in-law, and I was like, I'm financially strapped for cash. And then also feel like I am in a I feel like I'm in I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I'm drowning. And I know that it's not this bad of a situation, but in the season I was in, I couldn't see past it. That's all I could see. My world from the last 4 years or so just had flipped. And so I didn't know how to handle that. And so once I talked to them and I got it out of my chest and I like went to them in a sense of like kind of like a merciful. I don't even know if that's the right word. I like out of hopelessness. I was like, we sat down, we went through my finances, squared all that away. We talked a little bit about how I was dealing with things. We squared that away, and just get it out there felt so much better. And so then over the last couple years, excuse me, over the last couple years, I've continued to just leverage this sort of foundation or concept of writing down what it is that I'm feeling. And so that I wasn't feeling sad, depressed, or lonely, or all these things at once. And then also I wasn't happy at work with my career. So you add that fuel to the fire too. There's just this burning. Everything around me was just on fire. And so what I started to do is just take a note of it. And the reason why I started leaning into this sort of like personal development type of stuff is because I know going down that 16-year path of just dealing with it the way that I was dealing with things and alcohol and avoiding and all these other things, it's been nothing but trouble for me. And it has just snowballed. And it's just like the snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just like downhill, just very, very bad. And so I hurt people. I hurt myself. I've spent money, put myself in bad positions. I've gotten in legal trouble because of it, right? And so I finally was just like, you know what? Like something's got to give. I have never walked that path long enough to see what it's like. Let me try it, because the path that I'm on isn't, clearly it doesn't work. Clearly this path has gotten me nowhere, right? And so for me, I'm just going to go ahead and try to walk this other path. It was like a sense of hopelessness again. I know where I'm at is not the situation that I want to be. So I got to do something. But before I started taking action and doing all this is why I'm like super not anti, right? Like I'm not anti like men's health or mental health or whatever. I'm just very sensitive when it comes to it, because of the fact that I sat in this depression. I sat in this loneliness, dark time for a long time. And all it did was amplify those feelings and amplify the situation. And then amplify the depression, emotionless, whatever, boom, the stress, all this other stuff. And then I just like would go drink again, because it was just the easiest way for me to deal with things. Why? I don't know at the time. I wasn't mature enough to realize what was going on or how to handle it. And so that's just the way I handled it. And so this is why I'm a firm believer in action, because I sat in it for so long and all it did was put my back against the wall. And I started to kind of just drown. The hole got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so this is all learned experience. There's pain behind this. And this is why now in my life, I leverage this stuff, because I've learned to work with my emotions. I've learned to work with how I am and how I operate, not against. If I'm feeling a certain way, I'm not going to suppress what I'm feeling. I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to try to understand, why is it that I'm feeling this way? For me, this has been the pivotal thing in my life where like that switch flipped. It went from like night to day, in personal life, and like spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, in business, in my relationships with people, and kind of the standard around myself. It's not a very popular way to think. It's not a very exciting way to go about it. But I can tell you this, is that in the last 16 years of everything that I was doing, thinking chasing money was going to solve my problems, acquiring the next vehicle, the next thing, all this, man, through all that stage of my life, there was like this huge void in here. I would get the little things, and then, I would find myself again, just kind of in this like, man, what's going on? Why am I not like happy? I have everything that I need. I have everything that I want, in a sense. Like I've obtained all these goals and accomplished all these things, and I'm still like, what is wrong with me? And so what ended up happening is through that sort of feeling there, I just started picking up like my faith a little bit. And I'm like, man, you know what? Like I felt like God started knocking at my door. There was some things where it was just like, there's no way that's a coincidence, right? Like like they say like, oh, he'll let you know, he'll send you signs. Man, the signs were there. The signs were there. And so for me, it was again a little sense of hopelessness because of everything that I was feeling, and I couldn't find ways to power through that, right? And so for me, it became evident, what's the word for it, I don't know. It became aware to me that I need to kind of entertain this whole faith thing. And so I was like, we grew up in the church, right? But it was something that I was just kind of like told to do this. And I was like, yeah, whatever, cool, it's just what we do, right? Never really had a deeper meaning. So and then as I got older, kind of grew a little like resentful towards it, just because of the fact that I never had a really deeper understanding as to why we were going to church and what was the meaning behind this, right? And so when you don't know, you're just like, well, I don't know the benefit of this, or this doesn't really serve me. I can't see the reward from this, and so like I just kind of grew away from it, right? And so parents separated, went through all this other stuff, and you know, I just went away from it, and so now, because of everything that's happened in my life, man, I'm a lot more. I lean into it a lot more, and it helps me with vulnerability, because I'm a kind of guy where, if you tell me that's hot and I touch it, I'm like, okay, I know that's hot or that's cold or whatever, or that tastes like crap or whatever. I need the proof, and so for me, it's a little bit difficult because it's hard for me to believe in something that I don't see. Up until I had almost like a spiritual awakening type of thing, where I had just this rush of something come over me, where I don't know what it was, but I was sitting at church one day, hopeless with my situation, and just craving something more. And so I was like, man, I'm just gonna try this church thing. I don't know, but I know the path that I've been going on 16 years hasn't gotten me anywhere. Let me just go sit at church and see if I can try this faith thing and see where this God thing takes me. Man, and I sat there a couple times, and I called my buddy Jay, and I was like, dude, I don't know what happened, but I just started crying. I had like this just like sense of relief. I had this like overwhelmingness emotion, where I just sat in that church those two instances, and I just cried. And I was like, man, I don't know what's happening around me. I I gotta figure my life out, but something's happening here, and I had never felt that. And so that's what kind of like, until you would like, quote unquote, he's talking to me, he sends me signs. That's kind of where that came from for me. And so, man, the other thing was, I had tried to talk to that pastor in a service that he had when when the sermon was over, and I had kind of, asked him. I was like, man, how do you know when God's like trying to reach you? How do you know when God's trying to talk to you? And I couldn't help get the words out, right? So I was emotional, crying as I was saying this, and the guy just kind of gave me like a weird look. Like he just kind of like sighed. I'm covered in tattoos, right? Like boom. And so like I just kind of felt like he just kind of was just like looking at me, like kind of judging. And I know that probably wasn't the case, right? Here's this random dude that comes up to you crying, and he's asking you these questions, and he's hard to breathe or whatever, blah blah blah. I can't communicate. You can't really make out what he's saying. So I imagine that wasn't the I don't take it personal, right? Because I think what ended up happening in that moment, I got resentful because of how he responded, and I was like, man, screw this church. Screw this stuff. I'm not doing this or whatever. But here's the kicker. I don't think that question was for that pastor. I think that question was for the man upstairs. I think I needed to ask God that question and see and ask him, and that's what I started doing. And so the moment for me is because I'm scared of myself. I'm scared of myself and that path that I can go down, because I know that path of darkness, that path of depression, that path of emptiness here is a bad spot for me. That is not my happy zone. And so to avoid doing that, man, I've been praying a lot, and he's been answering. And so I think for me, it's important for me to have something to believe in that's bigger than me, that's greater than me, right? The God-fearing, almost in a sense, like what people say. And so every day I wake up and I work on my prayer. Every day I wake up and I work on my faith. And then also, too, on top of that, every day I wake up and I'm more aware as to the emotions that I'm feeling, and I take a log as to why I'm feeling a certain way. What about this season of my life? Because life's in seasons. You have high seasons, you have low seasons, you have seasons that everything works out in your favor. You have seasons that challenge the shit out of you, that make it really overwhelming. And so for me, because I know that I went through that dark time and that breakup and that depression and that loneliness and that drinking and that all that, and I made it out of that. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's gonna pass. just like this moment right here that I'm in right now, this moment's going to pass. And so in this season, there are things that I need to be mindful of and I need to be learning, that I need to be taking a note, that I need to be, discovering about myself. And so for me, because everything is emotions, I dove straight into the emotional aspect of myself to get familiar with myself so that I can become a lot more aware as to what emotions come out when I'm in this environment or this situation or this people or doing this or whatever. And now that I know those things, I'm like, okay, if I'm now aware of how I am and how I respond to certain things, now I can set those healthy boundaries. So I used an analogy in this speech that it was a little bit like bowling, right? And so before the healthy boundaries, you're bowling without the gutters. You're just like the kid that goes in there, throws a gutter ball, boom, nothing. And the goal is to get to the 10 pins at the end and hit that strike, right? Or a double, whatever they call it. And so without any experience, without any practice, without anything, never walking that path before of this emotional journey or this bowling situation, you're just prone to falling in the gutters, right? As you get your ball back from the gutter and you try again, you start to kind of fine tune your life, and you fine tune your bowl, and you start to kind of learn how you perform and where you're stronger and where you're weaker. And then you take a step to the right because you throw more to the left, or vice versa. You start to kind of perfect that, right? And so then before you know it, as you get a little bit older, they put those pins down, right? The safe zone for those kids. This whole time we've been protected by our parents and all these things. So those borders are up, and then they send us out in the world. Borders drop. We go through these life experiences and all these life challenges. And then we have to be mindful of those healthy boundaries. We have to learn about ourselves, and we have to learn how we react and how we respond. And then now, when you go bowl, you are a little bit more, you got the rhythm down. You got your rhythm down. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you found your comfort zone, and you know where you need to place that ball. You're still going to make mistakes, right? Things happen. No one's perfect, but now you know your rhythm. That's exactly what I feel like this emotional journey has been for me. It's becoming aware as to when I'm exhausted or I'm peaked in certain emotions: fear, anxiety, excitement, depression, loneliness, all these things, right? Like, if I'm mindful of all these things, I can learn. I'm like, oh shit, these are the things that make me happy. These are the things that make me sad. And so what I have found in my personal life is there's a pattern to it, right? And so as I'm taking a log of all these things, I'm like, every time I seem to be around this situation, or every time my finances aren't right, or every time I'm not eating right and I'm not working out, I seem to have kind of like troubled days. I seem to get into like a funky mood, or I seem to deal with like I'm short fused, right? And so started kind of being mindful of that. And then I started noticing like, oh man, what was great today? I had a great day today. What was out? Man, the sun was out. My finances are good. My relationships with people are good. I got to hang out with this person. I saw this girl. I had this business victory. I'm working out, like whatever it may be, right? And then I start like, oh shit, like, okay, time out. So let's take a step back here, and let's take all the information that we have wrote in this journal, and let's look at the pattern of this. So you mean to tell me that if I go about my life in this manner, I can have these great days? Okay. But if I go about my life in this manner, my days aren't that great, and then I'm having a challenging time. And so I started to be more aware of that. And so this has been key, man. This has been key to the growth of my business, because now that I'm aware of these things and I know how I respond in certain settings, now you can get to healthy boundaries. But without knowing and doing this homework, you don't know what boundaries are healthy. How do you know how to set this up? You're just going to put a bumper up on this person and let them keep you away, or stay away from them because, you're assuming something, or you think of something? And so there's, you can't just go around life not experiencing things and then just like staying almost like it's like those kids in school, or those kids in private school, when you restrict them for so long, the moment they get out into the real world, they're like, pew, they're off the rails. Like, that's because they've been sheltered for so long. And so for me, you got to get out there and you got to experience life. You got to get out there and you got to learn how certain situations and certain people and all these environments and all these things that you're consuming, whether it's food, whether it's mentally, music, whatever, how all these situations, how you're experiencing all these things, you got to be mindful of how those things, how those things make you work, you know? And so now it becomes this battle of like, okay, if I know I'm this kind of way in this setting, let me fine tune my life. Let me put these boundaries up, and let me just stay in this peak zone, right? This neutral zone where you're good. And so, without venturing out and stepping into uncomfortable settings, without stepping into the unknown, without pushing through the fear, it is really, really hard to figure out what it is that you do and don't like. There's no fear, there's no excitement, there's no nothing, because the whole time you're just reserved. So for me now, because of the pain that I went through with not allowing myself to see what that relationship was like, and never really knowing what the outcome of that would have been, and because of the fear of vulnerability, who knows where that relationship would have ended up. And it doesn't even really matter where that would have ended up. What matters to me is the fact that I never even gave myself the opportunity to get on that ride. I got all the way to the top of this roller coaster, and you know, everybody jumps in, buckles in, they're all going, and I'm just like, I'm gonna sit this one out because I'm scared. And so I will never experience what that was like. And so for me, there's pain behind that. And so although, you know, it didn't matter where it ended up, I just never really allowed myself to experience that. So I got to live with the fact that out of fear for me, I don't know if that might have been the end all for me. I could have been married with kids. You know, I could have been divorced with kids. I could have not had kids and then just been divorced. Who knows? It could have been some tragic thing, or actually it could have worked out. But the fact that I was scared, and I was scared to be vulnerable, I robbed myself of that experience. And so for me, now everything I do is just for the sake of experiencing. I will never, ever allow myself to not experience something out of fear. And so, or just being vulnerable. And so part of working all this backwards is writing down what's so scary about it. What's so scary about experiencing life? What's so scary about putting yourself out there? The more and more that I put myself out there, the more and more I have data, however you want to use it, tomato, the more and more that I put myself out there, I have more information, and I'm able to build more confidence because I'm aware of how I react in certain situations. I can do this real estate stuff almost with my eyes closed because initially I jumped. I put myself in a very vulnerable, scary path, and it's been growth every time. Same thing when I quit the plant. I probably could have played it a little bit better, right? I could have definitely leveraged the money and done all that. But in that moment, I needed to ruffle some feathers. So I just cold turkey quit. I was depressed with in the house, with my livelihood here at home. But then also I was depressed in that career. So I was leaving depression to go to depression, then coming home to depression. And so I just like, man, I need to get the hell out of here. But I wasn't emotionally and mentally mature to see what was wrong and where it was, because now I'm in the same setting. I'm still in the same house. I'm in the same area that I wanted to run away from and move from because of all the emotions and everything that was tied from this. And I'm in a great place. And so now that I'm aware that, like, oh shit, like, you can be in the same environment and have two different experiences. And the environment didn't change. Well, who's the one variable that did? Like, what changed? The perspective. Oh shit, so it's a perspective thing. Okay, well, if it's a perspective thing, then how do I log or understand? And so you study yourself. And this is where for me, the emotional thing was the thing that I started to study so that I have a different perspective of it. And so now, because of the pity party story that I told myself for so long, where I sat in that depression and that loneliness and that darkness and I was drinking, I kept telling myself that story. So I was a product of what I was telling myself. And so I sat so long in that, like I said, then I ended up with my back against the wall where I just needed to fight. And so there was that my trigger for all this growth and all this was pain. It was the pain of what I had went through. It was the pain of losing that, of not being able to experience what it was like because of me, because I was scared. You imagine living your whole life in fear and never being able to experience the fear, never experience the happiness, the emotion, the letdown, the cry, the joy, the excitement, all the dude, how cool is it that we get to experience that? If you're okay with putting yourself out there. And so now, like I said, I am just I kind of lost my train of thought with that. But I'm now just I'm in it. I know that I can get through these things because last season and the season before and the season before that, I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't see it. I thought like that was the end of me. And so now that I'm aware that if I take a mental note, right, and I understand a little bit about myself, I become familiar with myself and I learn how to leverage my emotions. And I don't need to overreact when I get an abundance of money to go buy a car. Or if it's a gloomy day and the sun's not out, I don't need to get depressed because I'm already familiar with this. Oh, this is gonna be a challenging day for me to show up because the sun's not out, and I'm a sun person. I like me some sun. Like it just does something to my soul. And so I know that like I gotta work twice as hard on days like this. Even with this video, I was hesitant to make this video, but I had a conversation with a good friend of mine today, and then another buddy texted me and he had a great news. And so I'm like, oh, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep showing up because regardless of what's going on around me, I need to show up because the world's relentless. The world's gonna keep moving. And so if I just sit in, I think that's where I was going with it. I think if I just, I think that's what it was. So if I just sit in the pity party of the story that I tell myself, or I sit in whatever it is, that's what's gonna be produced. So I've been more intentional about what I tell myself. I tell myself this is a season and this is teaching me something. What do I need to learn right here? Where's the lesson in this? What patience, boundaries, my value? Like what is it that this thing is trying to teach me? And then I start taking the notes, and then I work through it, and then I look back and I'm like, oh, that's what that was trying to teach me. That's what that was letting me know. And so then you start to build this confidence because you're like, oh, okay, I've been in this situation before. I've felt this before. I know what this is like. I know how I respond to this. But now we got the armor. Now we got the how to, get through this. And so for me, in order to achieve anything great and keep pushing these boundaries and keep being a better version of myself is digging deeper, man. Is digging deeper and realizing how I am, responding to certain things and learning to leverage that. Oh, dude, you're gonna get like this if you're not on your A game. And so now that I know, fine tune it, and I know my harmonic flow of where my days are in harmony, I have better days. Even in the midst of this weather, where this weather's not, it's gloomy outside today. That's why I keep pointing out. But even in the midst of this weather, even in the midst of business maybe sometimes not going too great, or my finances probably not being where I want them, right? So I know that like it's just a season. I still got to show up every day, and then the perception of it changes, and it's just like, man, how fortunate am I that I get to have this experience in this season right now? How fortunate am I that I get to learn this right now? How fortunate am I that I get to struggle with business right now? How fortunate am I that my problems is learning how to stay home? How fortunate am I that my biggest problem now is being okay in the silence? There's no chaos. I'm not really fighting for survival anymore. I can breathe now. I got a little cushion. I'm good because I use the emotional aspect of these things to set these healthy boundaries where I don't fall in that state anymore. I want to be in that neutral state where I'm in harmony, right? Like it's like a harmonic flow of just like a rhythm that just soothes you, right? It's like that first bite of whatever, right? That feels good. It's where you get up and you're just like, man, today's a great day. You feel rested. What you've consumed has been good to you, what you're putting out, business, your relationships, all these things. So for me, I gotta be mindful of the things around me so I stay in that zone because I perform better in that zone. And so now that I know this about myself, I can set the healthy boundaries. And so that's why I jump straight into logging what I'm feeling and what I'm processing instead of jumping right into boundaries, because I think without taking a log of what we're feeling, how do we know what boundaries are healthy and what boundaries serve their purpose or serve what purpose? And so um, that's step one for me. So if I can help anybody achieve anything, I would say, man, get the emotional intelligence down. Be mindful of what spikes your emotions. Like for me, y'all know this about me because y'all see it. The cars. When I get an influx of money, I want to go buy something. That's just my thing. That's my kryptonite. And so, not my kryptonite. That would be like the enemy thing. I guess that would be like my kryptonite in a sense, because it's the thing that kind of like kills me, right? And so what I've been learning to do, and so I know that I've had it before, and I'm not saying that I'm never gonna get those things, but what I'm doing right now is I'm building, like like I became aware of my emotions, and I know what my neutral zone is. Now I know that structure over in my finances, I got to find that neutral state. Where am I at peace? Oh, when you got like a year worth of savings, that's where I'm comfortable. And so now that I have my year worth of savings, anything extra, anything in addition to that is extra or an abundance. And so for me, what I'm working towards is just staying in that neutral zone and I'm leaning into not the car thing because I know that'll always be there. But what I got to do is I got to find a well-oiled machine or build a well-oiled machine that generates money that keeps me in this neutral zone. And so part of being in this neutral zone and finding that comfort is not being so emotionally excited and spending money when I get a little cushion, right? Whether that's going out to eat, that's traveling, cars, whatever it may be, right? You get that dopamine increase when you get that big paycheck and you're like, "Oh, I'm good, right? Let's go splurge a little bit. Oh, I worked hard." Boom, boom, boom. And I'm not saying don't treat yourself. Just make sure that you don't treat yourself in a sense where, at least for me, I'm not gonna overdo it because I'm building, a cushion to keep me in this neutral zone longer. And so now the game is not giving into the temptations that drain that neutral zone, but using this money to leverage another source of steady income where I'm not constantly having to chase more business all the time. And I can find a source of money, that feeds into this neutral zone. Because now that I've got this thing coming in and my neutral zone is good, man, I'm chilling. I don't have to move. I'm comfortable. And this right here, comfort in this zone, bro, this is like the most beautiful feeling I've ever been in my life. This is the most like satisfied I have ever been. This is I have never felt this in my life in a long time. And I've traveled, I've had money, I've had cars, and even in the midst of all those things, dude, this is more rewarding, this neutral zone, because it allows me cushion room to breathe. I'm not fighting for financially. I'm not fighting spiritually. I'm not fighting, physically. Man, I'm in a good state. I'm in a good state. How do we stay here? Well, I know for me, it's that reserve. It's that money, because that money keeps that cushion that buys me more time. And so I have time in my neutral zone. I have time in my comfort zone. And so I got to make sure that I don't take my time and spend it on a vehicle, because then that puts me in a state of like fight or flight. And that's not that neutral zone. That's where now I'm survival. And when you're going in this fight or flight mode and you have all these things pulling from you, there's so many emotions with this. It's hard to appreciate what you got, and you can't perform and fire on all cylinders when you're not in that neutral zone because you're in survival mode. You need money to eat. You need money for bills. You need money for this. You need money for that. I had to declutter. I had to declutter the cars. I had to declutter the traveling, the hobbies. I had to just hyper focus on the one thing, and that was real estate. That's the best thing I did in my life. I'm gonna get the cars back. I'm gonna get it again because I've already did it, but I'm gonna do it different now. I'm gonna do it where I got this source of income, and this thing is steady. The machine is steady flowing money in, and now I have an abundance because my neutral zone only needs this much, and now I got double that now, and then triples coming in because I built this system, this business the things that I'm doing, the relationships that I'm building. All these things are keeping me in feeding this machine that is bringing in more money. That's gonna allow, but it's for me that the challenge for me is to stay in this neutral zone. I don't need any more. I got a roof over my head. I got a place to sleep. I've got my family that's good. My business is growing. My relationships are a lot more in depth. My conversations are a lot more intentional and meaningful. So that's where I'm at. And so what I challenge you guys is, before you can get to where I'm at, whatever that version of this looks like for you, learn about yourself. Write down why you act a certain way, why you keep having the same repeated behavior, why the outcomes of your day to day and your week to week and your year to year are the same. If, and only if, you want something different, if you crave something different, that's all. If you don't and you're okay and you're content with everything's at, man, power to you. You found that neutral zone and you're good. And everybody's zone is going to look different. Some people are okay with, just having enough to get by. They don't need no extra. They don't need nothing more. They're cool. And that's okay. There's no wrong or right way to do life. I hope this information helps. This was a little bit of kind of how I went with this speech. This is a little bit more organized. This is a little bit more, I guess, intentional or not so scattered, because now this is the second time that I'm practicing this speech, this delivery of this, because the first time I did it, I just kind of winged it. And I found myself getting a little sweaty. Well, that's because that was an emotional spike, because I was nervous, because I didn't prepare enough. And now, like, that I have prepared and I understand the meaning behind it, or the delivery behind it, or how I want to address it, I'm a little bit more mindful of like how I'm going about this. But this is practice. And this is also being aware of the emotions when I was running on so long and doing all this other stuff. Anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But step one, get in tune with who you are. Get in tune with who you are and take a log. Sometimes it could be something as simple as like, how was my day today? Today I had a good day, and this was why. Boom, 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 boom. Today was a challenging day. This was why. Boom, boom, boom. Today was a weird day because it was neither excited or it was neither sad or whatever. It was just a day. Today I dayed. That was it. I just dayed. Doom, doom, doom. Went through the motions of it. Cool. And that's okay. But you got to find out who you are and what it is. And once you understand that, man, now you can learn to set those boundaries. Peace.